So we are here. Welcome back to PWTB. We are here with our guest. We have Kevin on the show. Kevin, something I like to ask guests all the time. Who are you and what can you tell us about yourself?
Well, my name is Kevin Barral. I am 18 years old. I am currently the beat writer and reporter for Fish Stripes. I also do some coverage for FIU athletics and some Spanish coverage for the Marlins. So that is who I am, and I'm very excited to be on your podcast. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. So we're gonna jump right into our topic, Miami Marlins. What do you think their ceiling is for this year, considering all the offseason moves they've made? What do you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, you look at the moves they made. They brought in a batting champ. They really upgraded the offense, in my opinion. You bring in a good plethora of really just contact hitters. You bring in Gene Segura. You make some moves in your infield, and you put Jazz in center field. I do think this team could really, fully healthy. You're playing at your best. You really are banking on the bounce back seasons of guys like Avi Garcia, Jorge Soler. I think the Marlins really have a good chance to make the playoffs. Now, you have to keep in mind the division they're in and just, they're in the NL East. You're facing off against the Phillies, who just brought in Trey Turner. They just got a lot better. You look at the Mets, who just brought in Justin Verlander, although they did lose Jacob deGrom. And then you look at the Braves, who just get better and better every year. They just upgraded a catcher, and now they have Sean Murphy with them, just getting better, re-signing all of their guys to these extremely cheap deals. But they're
Yeah,
doing it.
that's
But
actually an interesting question. Just really quick, because you said that they could make the playoffs. I believe that they can too. I like the Arise trade. I
yeah.
like getting, your lineup is what needed work. I think that adds a little pop to it. What do you mean make the playoffs though? Like, because you do have those top heavies at the top of the division. Wild card or
Oh yeah, wild card. They're not winning the division. Like no offense to them, but I think Miami. I think I'll say it like this. I think we'll see the Marlins be kind of what like the Brewers were last year, just in it right until the end. That's how that should be the ceiling for this team, or at least the goal. If Miami could stay in it right until the end, kind of like we saw with the Brewers last season and the Phillies, who they did end up making it, and that was thanks to that the new added wild card spot. I think Miami really does have a good chance to do that. And I think, they put themselves in that position, especially, although he traded Pablo, and that's something we didn't even mention. They traded Pablo Lopez. You still add in a player like Johnny Cueto, who I am very excited to see what he does in that Marlins uniform. So, and just the prospects coming up, Yuri Perez, Dax Fulton, those are two guys who I really do hope to see at some point in 2023. Maybe towards the end, maybe Yuri, I do believe will be up sooner. Dax will just have to wait and see. But
Mhm.
Miami's pitching still some of the best in the National League, and maybe at some point in baseball. And keep in mind, you have the Cy Young winner, Sandy Alcantara, out there every fifth day, so you could kind of guarantee yourself a win there every fifth day.
All right. I do have some questions about prospects before we move on to our discussion about the Dolphins.
For sure, man.
As you mentioned, Jax Bowen, he dominated Double A last year. Yoli Perez, he's great. What are your thoughts about Zach King and maybe those pitchers in the system that don't get as much recognition?
Yeah, there's some really interesting guys in the system, especially towards the bottom, as you mentioned. You guys like Zach King, Zach McCambley. You also have down there MD Johnson, and just gonna pull up quickly the MLB Top 100 and you just go down the list of those guys. But Miami has some of the best pitching prospects, some of the best pitching development in baseball, and we could confidently say that with Miami. And just going down the list right here, just gonna pull it up and kind of just go down to what I see. Well, I mean, you also have to look at just staying a little high on the list. Jacob Miller, their draft pick. You keep going. Carson Milbrand, another draft pick. I really like what Miami's done with pitching. And look, and another guy who they brought in, Nick Enright, that is maybe their Rule 5 draft pick. He will be on the
Mhm.
major league team throughout most of the season. That is a guy I am very excited to see what he does. MD Johnson is another guy who I believe deserves a bump up in the minor leagues. He was at high A, spent 2 full seasons at high A. You don't see that with a prospect often, and I do believe he will get the bump up to Double A. Then there's obviously Josh Simpson, Brian Hoeing, who fall into that category of top 30. And then just keep going with the pitching. The ones that they added to the 40-man roster, although they're relievers, I do believe they will make a huge impact. You have George Soriano, Sean Reynolds. Ooh, I'm missing a name. Eli Villalobos, and I'm missing one more. I believe it was Josh Simpson. Yeah. So you have those four guys who you added to the 40 man. I believe they'll be making a huge impact to this team. And you're just, I mean, that makes you a little bit more willingly to sometimes trade pitching the amount that they have. That is why you saw a trade like Pablo Lopez occur. And, I do believe maybe one more should happen. Can it happen? Maybe, but I do think it'll be down through from the minor leagues. If a trade were to happen, in my opinion, I think it should be minor leagues. You really don't want to mess too much with your major league depth, especially you have Luzardo, Rogers, Edward Cabrera, and I don't know. What do you guys think about these prospects down there?
I think I actually disagree with that kind of. I think a trade will come from, the major league club. I think, maybe Trevor Rogers. Maybe
Maybe,
Trevor Rogers, um, maybe you're right. Maybe a minor league trade will happen.
But
Evan, what
as
do you
the
think?
outsider here, as the non-Marlins fan, what your pitching's your strong suit. Would you want to get rid of that? Would that be smart? Would you think?
I mean,
Like I get he's not the top, but
you get rid of it to an extent. And that's what
yeah.
I think Miami
Right.
really looked to do this offseason, which is why they traded someone like Pablo. He was the closest to free agency. He was the one who would be commanding money for a contract extension, which don't doubt he did it. You will assume he did it because he pitched probably the best season of his career last season. And that's really what it came down to, I guess. A guy who was closest to free agency was the one who was traded, and Miami had to add pieces to move someone like Pablo because with a guy only 2 years left in his arbitration years going and then into free agency, you would assume he's going to command a good amount of money. And Miami somehow got Sandy for that amount when they extended his contract for I believe it was 56 mil for 4 years. Miami wasn't going to give Pablo more than that, at that point it
Right.
just really looked like not the best situation. And now you have to look. Are the Marlins going to extend these pitchers for under 56 million? You're paying a Cy Young winner that Sandy's going to probably want. Sandy, if you would have waited another year, he would probably be $100 million pitcher right
Oh
now in
yeah,
the
he's
major,
gonna go up quick. Yeah.
and even more than that. And well, that's probably why maybe Marlins traded Pablo Lopez because if he would have turned into an all-star, if he would have put up another season, Pablo would be probably commanding around 75, $80 million range. And Miami's not going to do that when your star guy's getting 56 million a year.
Yeah.
Just one more question before we
Oh,
move on to the Dolphins. I'm sorry if I'm, asking too
no,
many questions here.
no, go, bro.
Um, Jacob Amaya,
Ooh.
a minor league player we just acquired from the Dodgers. What are your initial thoughts on him? Do you think he's major league ready?
Yeah, Jacob Amaya was acquired in the Miguel Rojas trade. It was a 1-for-1 swap. I really like Jacob Amaya. I was talking to
Mm.
some of the guys at Fish Stripes. We're very high on Jacob Amaya. We feel very strongly about him. When you look at the last guys they've acquired via trade, you look at Jordan Groshans, Xavier Edwards, and now Jacob Amaya. Just looking at infield prospects. And Amaya is the one who provides the most power out of these guys and still gives you the high walk rate, the contact hitting, and the high on base percentage, which have kind of been what the Miami's really been looking into in terms of targets. Amaya provides all of that, but that power hitting. Had 17 homers in 2022 between AA and AAA. I do believe Amaya has a good chance to make the opening day roster. He just really has to impress out there in terms of, will he beat Joey Wendell? Will he outperform Joey Wendell, who at the moment is the starting shortstop for the Marlins? So if Jacob Amaya could really outperform Joey Wendell, he really has a good chance, in my opinion, to really crack that opening day roster and maybe even start, because at the end of the day, Joey Wendell was never acquired to be an everyday player. Joey Wendell was acquired to give you 110, 120 games a season, not play an everyday position like they're trying to force that. And that's maybe why you saw injuries from Joey Wendell last season, majority of the season injured. And yes, he was all right, but we saw Joey Wendell become an all-star, giving you not many games a season, playing the utility role, which is what Miami has to do. And, we'll see what happens there, but I do believe that Maya has probably the best chance to crack that opening day roster out of the three when it comes to Groshans, Xavier Edwards, and Jacob Maya. I think Amaya will crack that roster if he performs well in spring training. It just comes down to that.
Yeah, I really hope he does. And now moving on to the Dolphins. Oh boy, the Dolphins. What do you think they do with Tua Tagovailoa?
I think he stays, man. I mean, you have to look at the season he had. Yeah, you look at the concussions, it sucks. And I think if he didn't have those concussions, Miami probably would have made, I would say, maybe the divisional round. I think they would have beat Buffalo, maybe the AFC Championship game. I think they would have had a chance to do that. You had to look at what Tua did throughout the whole season, and especially after the first concussion, he came back and he balled out. I mean, I believe they won on a 5-game win streak following his return. So, and he ranked first in almost every.
Real quick, I have
category.
never seen a quarterback under microscope like Tua has ever been.
No,
like we
neither
talked
have I.
about,
This is
we
crazy.
did a video about this a month ago. Last year, what was it? Oh, Mac Jones is better. You got to get rid of Tua. You got to get Lamar right away. Even his like rookie year, they were already talking about it because Herbert took off, of course. And yes, does he have a concussion problem? Yes. Does he have the strongest arm in the world? No, but he's put up very good numbers. Like that Ravens game earlier this year was insane. You know, I agree. He's just so under microscope. It's crazy, but
you have to keep giving him a chance, and maybe you won't give him a contract extension. But he proved himself under a new coach, Mike McDaniel. I mean, you look at what he did under that guy in just one season. Imagine what he could do moving forward. And I do believe Tua's the guy. Now, if you're looking at a replacement QB option, there's not much out there. I guess if you really want break the bank and really screw yourself over when it comes to cap, you bring in Lamar Jackson, but I really don't see that happening.
Now I will say on that though, Lamar and Tyreek, like I get it with cap, that would be a death sentence, but the thought of Lamar and Tyreek Hill is intriguing.
Oh no, it's amazing. Miami probably would be the AFC favorite behind Kansas City. I would put him behind. I'll put him over Cincinnati, in my opinion, over Baltimore. All those
because that speed, but
of course. And you bring in someone. You could bring in Derek Carr, maybe trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't really think you want those options.
Derek Carr is his boy. I'm not a Derek Carr guy.
That's his boy. I don't like Derek Carr too much. I'm not the biggest
Jimmy Carr. They're very mid-tier quarterbacks, but Jimmy Garoppolo is a winner. We can at least say about it. He wins games.
I mean, he was under Tom Brady for what, 6 years before finally getting his big time chance.
Right.
So, it just makes sense to go after someone like that if you're looking for a QB, but I would stick with Tua, roll with Tua. And that guy, he's a damn good quarterback. You won't find much more out there. And I would say he's already had, you could even mention more success than Justin Herbert to some levels.
Now, I feel like this is a question that's been answered mostly this offseason. As no, maybe. But do you think they spend one of the 4 draft picks on a quarterback this year, or maybe like a Max Duggan or a Clayton Tune, maybe one of those smaller school quarterbacks to be a backup?
They already did it last year with Skylar Thompson. Don't really see the need to do it again. I do believe Skylar Thompson could easily be the backup QB. Maybe they do. Maybe they spend that 7th rounder again, another guy, and you have him ready there. But really, I mean, you already invested one into Skylar Thompson. He very much impressed me, at least. He kept them in the game with Buffalo. One bad pass towards the end of the game. So you really can't give him much. And, to go into Buffalo, especially, and do what he did is just impressive. So I really wouldn't, I wouldn't spend another draft pick on a QB. You already lost your 1st rounder. You kind of have to really microscope this draft and fill out the real needs you have on this team, because you can't really just be spending it on a QB. And maybe they do bring back Teddy Bridgewater. Who knows? I do believe he has a contract option or something. I'm not sure what the contract looks like, but you probably just bring back Teddy for another year and ride it out.
Now, with Mike Gesicki leaving, do you think they go after a tight end in free agency, they trade for a tight end, or they draft a tight end, maybe like a Dalton Kincaid from Utah? What do you think?
I wouldn't mind them drafting a tight end. I would like them maybe to go into free agency if you're in the win now mode, which Miami 100% is in. I think you do go after a tight end in free agency. There are some good ones out there. Don't know. I know the Raiders backup was out there. I think it's Justin Morneau. Correct me if I'm wrong, or something like that. But he would be a nice option. I know he's been mentioned out there. Or, I mean, you mentioned it. Go in the draft. Miami hit with Mike Gesicki. They obviously know what they're doing there, and you could go out and draft whoever in the draft. And if you feel confident in that guy, go for it. I mean, you also have Hunter Long, who you drafted in the draft. You have Durham Smythe still with you. So those are 2 other good options they have. So, I mean, they could really go anywhere with tight end as long as he could block well and kind of produce what Mike Gesicki did in 2021, because then 2022 he had a big down year just in terms of production. I think you feel pretty good. But now keep in mind, Mike McDaniel really doesn't use the tight end much in terms of the catch. He uses it more for run blocking and blocking in
Yeah,
general
I had
stuff.
Gesicki on fantasy. I could speak to that, but yeah, for a little bit.
All right, Kevin. So we will let you go. We just want to thank you for coming on to the show, and we appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.